Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with trauma surgeon Dr. Stephan Moran. Stefan, hey.
I'm doing great. How about you guys? Good to see you.
And we have Adams Hudson, car collector connoisseur consultant.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
Adams.
All right.
Raconteur.
Glad to be here. I noticed that the Zoom lady, did you guys get a new Zoom voice when she said her little intro?
I wasn't
She's on
paying
helium.
attention.
She's speaking through helium, clearly. Anyway.
I didn't even pay attention.
Well, she seemed excited that we're all together, so I'm looking forward to today.
I'm glad somebody's excited.
Yeah.
Well, beside us. So cool. We're going to talk Audi today. We've got some history of Audi, some present of Audi, some future of Audi. We're going to really go into Audi because we all love Audi. And Audi's not having a great time right now, so we'll talk about that. We have trauma surgeon safety. We're the only car podcast that has a trauma surgeon who has operated on car crash victims and done research on car crashes. So Dr. Stephan Moran is with us, and then we're going to talk collect your car stuff and car spotting. And we have a lot of stuff. It's going to be a good show. So Stefan, why don't you start us talking about Audi? Because we got a lot of Audi stuff to talk about, and let's roll.
All right, before I do that, I wanna show a picture here. Make sure I got the right one. There we go. So I was going slalom skiing this week with my buddy. So I got the Miata out and I stopped at the local grocery store to pick up some potato salad for lunch after our skiing, and I saw this beautiful red M series M340i parked in Arley, and man, it had nice interior, two-tone interior. And then I saw the lady that came out to the car, and this is Granny Alicia. Her kids call her Lovey. But when I looked in the car, there are two seats, kids' car seats in the back of the car.
Wow.
Yeah, so she tools around with her grandkids in the back of her sport. She said, I had to give up my sports car. I didn't ask her what it was, but she said, I needed something to haul the grandkids around, and this fit the bill. She said, I decided not to get a stick because with the kids in the back, it was just too much to deal with. So she said, no stick shift, but she has a blast driving it. So shout out to Granny Alicia.
Go Lovey.
Go Lovey. Man, I bet the
Man.
grandkids love going out with Lovey.
And this is where, and I think we've all shared this in our car origin stories, this is where those kids get immersed, they get exposed, and who knows if they'll be car people when they grow up, but that's a heck of a good start.
Yeah, it's like carmine red with black wheels. It's absolutely beautiful. I love the red.
Yeah, I thought that was a really very pretty red color as well. You can see it next to my red Miata in the background, but it's a nice deep red. So
Yeah, it's like a carmine red. I love that color. I love her. And I love that you're probably like me. You would smile and not say, why is it that only one of us knows that that car was not offered in a stick?
yeah, I didn't know that.
Okay, well, I wouldn't have said anything. But when
Yeah.
she said I did get a stick, I'm like, yeah, you did get a stick because you didn't want to be distracted for your grandkids, and it wasn't offered in that car.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's two solid reasons.
Two good
Right.
reasons.
But she
All
had
right.
the intent. It crossed her
Yes.
mind, so she
Yeah.
still gets the point.
I
All right.
think it's great.
All right, so yeah, we're talking about Audi, and I'm going to open up talking about Audi. And I know I've said this before, but Audi has like become the Goldilocks and the Three Bears house of design in the last 5 to 10 years. Their glory days. We'll talk about some of their glory cars earlier, but do you want the little wee Q3 or A3, or the middle-sized Q5 or S5, or do you want the great big A8 or Q8? And it's this cookie cutter house of design, and along with this, what we've seen with them is the interiors are no longer near as nice. And then they pulled out, let me get the picture up here. Then they came out and said, oh yeah, we got the new Audi A5 Sportback, and trying to really ramp up this car and their new design. And I mean, look at this. All right. Okay, it looks like every other
Ooh.
midsize
Yeah.
SUV. And they cut back the Sportback thing. It like takes all of your space out of the back. So there's no room to really store anything. And it just to me, it's an SUV, but it's not sporty. And I'm like, give me a break, Audi. This is not interesting. It's like everybody else.
It
Let's
looks
go
like a
back.
Mazda or a Hyundai.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Actually, I'll go so far as to say I think a Mazda is more attractive, possibly the Hyundai too. And Steph, you're right. When that silhouette clips down that hard, it turns the SUV into a lowercase u. There's not much utility to that
Yeah.
design.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're a tall back-seated passenger, that thing is right above your head. It's like riding around the old Mercedes CLS, which I absolutely loved. But that back seat was compromised with that sloping design. Yeah, so I just feel like, we'll talk about some of the days of earlier Audi and great design, but they've been hit hard. They got the 25% import tariff. China sales are down. They haven't brought a whole lot of cars into the US to realize that they're relying on dealer inventory, which means it's getting boring in Audi dealers. It's really posing a threat to the market of competitiveness. And yeah, their Q7 or 8, their current lineup lags far behind the newer stuff from BMW and Mercedes. And put that together with some of their software is not that great, and their interiors are no longer innovative, the best in class. I'm like, they need a little reboot, and they need a reboot by bringing in something that's really cool again, like they've done in the past. And we'll talk about some of those cool Audis in the past.
Let me say this. I think that the, when we were younger in the 70s and 80s, the 80s, of course, Audi had their Quattro Coupe, which was so cool. It rallied, it
Right.
was cool, four-wheel drive. It brought four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive to the luxury market and changed the market as a result. But modern Audi, which is the an equal competitor with Mercedes, BMW, and Lexus, modern Audi did not happen until 1995 when the A4 was introduced. And this happened 2 years after a certain Volkswagen CEO named Ferdinand Piëch took
Oh, there
over.
it is.
And he said, he said a couple things. Number one, we're going to make
Audi
cars
great again.
we're going to make Audi great again. And he said,
The
we're going to do it
original
with
Mega.
interior, good interiors, great interiors, best in class interiors, lighting, and understated design. And then he did another thing. He changed the nomenclature. It used to be the Audi 100, the 90, the 80. And he said, no, we're going to change. This is before SUVs. We're going to have the letter A, which stands for Audi, or S or RS, but A was what the cars were, and it's going to be they're going to compete with BMW, and it's whatever the BMW is plus one. So the A4 came out that competed with the 3 Series, the A6 came out, it competed with the 5 Series, and the 8 with the 7 Series, and they were going to compete with BMW, and they did. And that wave from 1995, and the A4 was a sensation. I drove the first model. I was like, I can't believe how much better this is than the previous cars. That Audi legitimacy, of course, their sales skyrocketed, continued until a couple of years ago. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I feel like they haven't given it away, but they lost a lot of that momentum.
They did, and what a brilliant thing you just described about the nomenclature, because I guarantee P8 probably came out with it on his way to a meeting, walking briskly down the hall. It would have taken the marketing department 2 months of meetings to come up with that. And I do remember well that the Audi 80, which I'm going to say was really the progenitor of the A4, was kind of a tinny little thin. It wasn't flimsy necessarily, but it just almost felt like Japanese plus. It just was barely there. It wasn't as Germanic. When the A4 hit, man, that was a piece of engineering, and it was sculpturally beautiful. It was technically marvelous. It rode good. It looked good. It worked well. And it seemed like 3 out of 5 friends I knew when that car launched bought one.
Yeah, the Quattro Coupe was unbelievable, but it was for enthusiasts only and enthusiasts with a lot of money. The A4 was for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Adam, do you want to talk about a little bit of some of the previous marvels, as you've called them, from Audi?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're supposed
Yeah,
to say
my-
yes.
Yes,
You're
you say yes,
supposed to
Adam.
say
Say yes.
I blanked at the part where you addressed me. I'm serious. I'm gonna have to start coming to rehearsals.
Well, here, let me
For
give
the
you
record, we
here.
don't have any rehearsals.
All right,
That's
there you go. Here's your cue,
If you
Adam.
couldn't
See,
tell.
oh, that is it. Audi, as Steph alluded, and certainly Steve followed up with the modern versions of what Audi does so well. It's not like they just woke up when everybody became cognizant of an Audi in the U.S. This is a 1930s design that we're looking at, and this was part of what was the Silver Arrow design and race car thought of the 30s, which of course Mercedes participated in greatly. But this is an Audi, clearly, with the four rings up front. Could have been an NSU, DKW engineering there. But just look at it. If you think about aerodynamics as some sort of modern understanding, this is aircraft like in appearance. And this car would have had a mid engine supercharged V8 or rear engine at the time. And you can keep scrolling. But I mean, you just look at that thing, and here we are. They take that design, and this is a 1991, I believe, Tokyo Auto Show design. And this was what they call the Avis concept, touting their use of aluminum space frame, aluminum wheels, obviously a highly polished aluminum body. And though this was just concept, you can see the Audi TT, certainly with the wheels. I mean, I look at those wheels, I can see Audi TT wheels. You can see R8 coming. You can see the Le Mans winning race car R8 in that. And this car was a non-runner, but you know what motor, and Steve probably does know this, you know what motor was slated to be in this?
I didn't know, but I saw you wrote it down, so I'll let you take the credit because I didn't remember this.
Well, it would be I would imagine Pieck's
Yeah,
brainchild of the
it was.
W12.
Yeah, that was Pieck.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's what's in this car, the Avis, and I think there may be one more photo of it, just showing. You can see a lot of R8 in there, maybe a bit elongated in the rear, not a tiny bit clumsier than what the R8 became. And all along in here, we've got
Is that a
Audi.
Jag XJS from the front? That's what that looks like.
What is
Kind of
that?
looks like it.
I'm seeing
It
a
kind of looks
Jaguar
like it.
XJS from the front.
Yeah.
It looks
Oh,
Yeah.
your brain is wired a little backwards
Hey,
now.
by the way, not
See
I
that.
would say this, Stefan, how about this? If you look at this rear three-quarters look, there's a hint of another Piac mobile, the first generation Bentley Continental GT, if you look at that angle.
Yeah, I see that. Yep.
Oh, gotcha. I mean, like the tail lights look
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. I
How
can
about
see
that?
the XJS coming at me in this, please. And so Audi, at this time, I mean, this is 91. This is going back some time here, 35-ish years. And it's just amazing, the engineering feats they were pulling off. And if you can click over to the next one and think about it also, when we had the awful, we won't dwell upon it, but I mean, maybe it's worthy of honorable mention or dishonorable mention of the unintended acceleration. Audi's trying to overcome this. They're trying to establish themselves in the U.S. and they're trying to be something special. And danged if they weren't. I mean, they were just engineering themselves to death, and they were making great, great automobiles. And so they overcome all that, and they have the all-wheel drive concept. They start killing it at Le Mans, which would have been later. But they launched this car, and I think this almost brings us up to current era with how Audi was a little lost in the sales world. They were competing in some ways with Mercedes and BMW, but not in the showroom. And so they come out with this, the TT of 98 to 9. And I don't know, you guys might have an example. I've never seen a car as close to the concept that hit the showroom as this car.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I remember when this car hit, even with the concept, it was mind-blowing design in car. I mean, this
Yeah.
was so different from any other vehicle ever having been, brought out, and it created a lot of excitement. And I remember every time I saw one of these, all those details. It is such a cool car.
Yeah, it was very, very noteworthy because not only was it cool and it pushed Audi design forward in this Bauhaus style, but critically, they put it on a Volkswagen Golf platform. So this was going to be cheap to build, It was never going to be super expensive. You just put a different body on a Golf. So platform sharing, but it worked. I just thought it was so cool. And it didn't matter that it was a Golf with a better looking body.
No, you're right. And it was just a design that just got everyone's attention. And it worked well. It wasn't just, I hate to pick on, say, a Dodge Viper. Dodge Viper is very flamboyant and expressive, but it's a terrible use of space. It has more wasted space in it than
Yeah.
any two cars ought to be allowed. And you look at that, and there's not an inch of extra room anywhere, just super tightly done. And I love the TT. And I don't know if we want to get into the three faves yet, but that's the silhouette of the car. And if you look at it, it just looks impossibly short. And you can almost, like, is that a rear engine car? You almost can't tell just by looking at it. Of course, it's front engine and it's four-wheel drive platform, and it has a microscopic rear seat, which is amazing.
It actually had a decent rear seat because the convertible didn't have a rear seat at all, but the coupe did. And I had when I first drove this, which would have been 1999, I got a press car and I had my kids, of course, always wanted to ride in the back, my older kids. So I had an 8-year old and a 7-year old, and they fit back there no problem.
Wow, that's design packaging. And the Bauhaus design, that I think a lot of people didn't even know that word when it came out. It's used in a lot of different ways. You could look at Danish furniture, you can look at almost ranch houses of the 50s, and its polar opposite would be automobiles in America of the 50s. It would be Victorian architecture of the early 20th century. It is just no expressive flourishing on surfaces, no overdeveloped trim, no extraneous little flares and haunches and anything that's out of place. And other than, look how playful the interior is. Who knew we needed a baseball glove interior?
Yeah, it was so
I
cool. It was, stripped of ornamentation is what I think Bauhaus is. It's like
Yeah.
one step above brutalist architecture.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
All right, you want to move into our top three, Steve-O, or you got more to say?
No, I think I said everything I want to say, I think. Yeah, let's do our top three. So we decided let's find our top three Audis and go through them to really kind of tip our hat to this brand. And Stefano, why don't you start? Because
All right,
I
all
tell
right.
you, can we take a slight, just a briefest moment to
Yeah.
Yes.
think of the incredible accomplishments Audi did on the racetrack? Like
Mm,
like Steve, when you picked this period of Audi, like just bursting out everywhere, it was crazy designs that anybody could afford with the TT. It was these concept cars. It was then the racetrack, and they just kill. They win 5 out of 6 Le Mans basically in a row. I mean, they could have won 6 out of 6, but it's just the fact that they popped out as kind of largely a sedan maker onto the world stage in the toughest endurance sports car race in the world and just killed.
they dominate. Yeah. I think, before we move on to our favorite, I'll say the one last thing, and that is it looks like, what Car Magazine said it best. They put their money on black on the roulette wheel and it came up red. They put all their money on electric, all electric, and now it's going hybrid with internal combustion engines not dying as Audi had bet. So they are really scrambling. Sales dropped 14% from 2023 to 2024. They're dropping more now because they didn't develop their internal combustion engine cars. They just stuck on electric. And that was a bad bet. Now they're scrambling, they're putting money back in electric. And there's two things they want to do. Number one, Stefan, they want to bring that TT back, which you love, and Adams, you too. And the second thing they want to do is be a manufacturer and a team owner in Formula One. So back to racing, which is what you're talking about. Is that smart? I guess so. I mean, it's better than what they're doing now.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't, you know, Audi's going back into Formula One, Cadillac's going into Formula One, and it will be very interesting to see what that does in America in terms of, race on weekend selling Monday. Jim Farley's all about that with Ford. They're getting back into Formula One. So I think it's going to cost them a lot of money, and we'll see if it pays off. But I think they need to be spending that money a little bit more on their product line right now and bringing out some new stuff. I think that's more likely to get people into the dealership than having a relationship with Formula One.
Yeah, I agree. But they
Yeah.
know what they
We'll
I guess
see.
they know what they're doing. We'll see. So, but let's tip our hats to our favorite, our
All
favorite
right,
cars from
from the old era. All
95
right.
to 2015, which is really the golden era of Audi. And that's again what made them real competitors with BMW, Mercedes, and Lexus. So, Stefan, tell us your three favorite, and we'll just go around the horn.
All right, I'll do all three. So my very first one, here we go. As a Cobra fan, I absolutely love the idea of stuffing the biggest possible engines in anything. To me, I
I
just
Steph, I love how every time there is the slightest cracked door to mention an homage to Cobra, you do it, which is
well, right
which is
behind Pieck, okay?
which is
Right behind
exactly
Stephen
the
and
same as
Pieck. Yes,
Piag.
yes,
You can have any
True.
topic going on, and Steve will relate it to Piag.
yeah.
You could be talking about hairstylists, and they go, Piag had some nice hair, but no.
That's true. But this is kind of like I agree with this car. I love this car. It's pre 1995, but who cares?
Yeah.
It's a great car, and it was made by Audi with cooperation of who?
Porsche. So
Yeah,
this is for those of
Yes.
you that can't see it, this is the RS2 Avant. So this was the first time that one of the German companies had stuffed a giant motor into a station wagon. And this was the birth of this whole kind of hot shooting brake station wagons. Now BMW has one, Mercedes has one. But it was their inline five. It was turbocharged, all-wheel drive, quattro, 0 to 60 in 4.8 in the 90s. I mean, that was fast. And the birth of the super wagon, right here it is, the RS2 Avant, and I think it's huge. And I still love the RS6 Avant wagon. I love the BMW touring wagons. I think having a station wagon with some flares on it, low profile tires, and a big ass motor to me is so appealing. We had a Volvo 740 Turbo, which that car was a blast to drive. So I think this is my favorite of the Audis, just because it started the whole segment, and it was how did they get this past the bean counters? Hey, I got an idea. Let's get Porsche, spend a lot of money, put a big ass motor, lower our station wagon, put some cool wheels on it, and see how it does.
Speaking of cool wheels, am I seeing Porsche
yes,
C2 911 wheels on that?
from the
Wow.
964
Yes.
generation.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they
Yeah,
call them starfish wheels. Yeah.
this was the era, if you'll recall, it's just around the same time when Mercedes had Porsche build their E500 sedan or the 500E. And what happened was there was a worldwide recession around 1990, and Porsche really didn't do well. They were sucking fumes as far as survival. And what happened was both Audi, uh, partially owned just like Volkswagen by the Porsche family, and Mercedes both decided to help Porsche just give them work so they could survive. And it did. It enabled Porsche to survive. So it was this and the Mercedes E500 or
500.
500E that were
Mhm.
just basically being, Mercedes and Audi being bros to Porsche.
Wow. It's good to think about there that sort of triumvirate sort of coming together because yeah, Porsche had like three models for sale at the time, and then none of them were doing good. But I love this car, Steph, and I love that the sporting aspect to a wagon. It just seems like they're sort of opposites, but it gives a sporting pretense to a very useful, cool vehicle.
It gives a young new dad a little street cred.
Yeah, yeah, I
I mean,
like it.
yeah. So, and then my second favorite of this era
Ooh,
is
yeah.
the Audi R8 V10 manual. So I would want the V10 because of the Lamborghini Association. And you guys can tell me, I don't know what color. This is a blue, kind of like in a Gulf Riviera. I'm not sure what color Audi called this blue, but it's a fantastic blue. And what I really like about this car, it doesn't have the blade. The Audi, the R8 or 10 blade is color. In this car, it's color matched. And I think I would not want the black wheels, but to me, my other second one, this would be, and I'd want I would just have to have the V10 though. The 8 it, with rear wheel drive is really the one you want to have as a collector. But for me, if I'm gonna have an Audi, it's got to be all-wheel drive quattro, and I'd want the V10, and I'd want the stick, and this would be it.
Beautiful.
That's a good one. And that may be Riviera Blue. I know they've sort of,
Yeah,
you,
that's
you
good.
can
That
order out of the
Olympic.
Porsche catalog for a Audi color.
And then, of
Yeah,
course, my third favorite from this era is the Audi
yeah.
TT, which we've talked
Yep.
about. And then, we talked about this. This showed that Audi was design-led company, just not a German luxury brand. So, but this car made people notice Audi, and it got them in the showroom.
Yeah, amen. Adams, what do you got?
Let's,
Those are
what do I have?
three great ones. I agree.
I have a little overlap. That's
All
what's
right.
great. And I guess, Steph, as you're pulling those up, you'll see that there's overlap for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think my first one was the B. Well, no, my first the TT. Okay, I chose the VR6. I think it may
Oh,
have come out in '05, and so in the first gen TT, the only VR6 you can get, using the narrow angle. I'm gonna call it a Volkswagen. I guess that's what the VR stands for. But the narrow angle V6, you could have gotten in '05 and '06 only, and the Turbo 4 had decent horse. I think it was 2.25 horse, and this was like 250, so barely more. But there's something about not having the turbo. It makes me really like that particular car, and I feel like they'll be collectible because they're the originals with the better motor.
yeah.
And
I'd
there's
rather have a naturally aspirated V6 any day over a
same here,
turbocharged 4
It
any day.
sounds
same.
better.
Yeah, yeah, and look at those wheels. Those are the wheels that were on the Avis, by the way. And my second one, well, there's that crazy interior. It would be, and this is so interesting, Steph. I couldn't help but smile. I would have to have the side blades, and
Uh,
I have to have the V8.
Yeah.
Something about the 5.2 and the V10 is just too much motor. It's hard to imagine that a car enthusiast would say too much motor, but to me, it's almost like the big block Corvettes. It's kind of like, in hindsight, it was like, oh, that was a big lump of lead, and they always got hot, and they didn't produce enough more power to make it worthwhile. Certainly, the V10 Audi is way better engineered, but I had a 4.2, and I have a little soft spot for that car. The 4.2 being the V8, and it just makes fantastic noises. And I like the original design. I mean, I think that's a pre-facelift first gen car. I just really, really like it. It's got the diamond polished wheels, which I also was sort of fond of.
And if I recall talking to you about that car, that you put a lot of miles on that car
I did.
because it
Go ahead.
was because I remember you had said this is one of the, I'll let you finish it, but you put a shit ton of miles on this car because it was so usable.
Exactly that. And, it's like an exotic, sort of. I mean, maybe it's a near exotic. I don't know what category it fits in, but it's pretty exotic, just to see one. But you can use the thing. The AC works. They have a little bit of a reputation of popping hoses later, but now this design is what?
Yeah.
How old are we talking about? 10 to 15 years old in the first gen cars. But the ACs work, the suspension works, the windows work. You can see out of the back. You actually have luggage space, and that's some things you cannot say about a lot of exotics. So yeah, I did put a lot of miles on
Yeah.
that car.
It's kind of like
plus,
a Tiffany with a PhD, right?
There you go. It's and this being almost Tiffany blue there, Mr.
Yeah,
Cook.
there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
by the way, another thing is that with the V10, you take it to your dealer. A lot of the mechanics have never seen that V10. This
Yeah.
4.2 was in all kind. It was in the A6. It was in the A8. It was ubiquitous across Audi back then.
Yep.
So your dealer the mechanic would know how to work on this easily.
Good point. Exactly. Very approachable car. And then the last one, this is a real sort of overlap here with Steph. I chose the B6S for Avant because for whatever reason, the US just did not get them. Either the dealer body didn't want them or Audi didn't want the US to have them or they didn't want to certify them. Steve may know the ins and outs of that. But at the end of the kind of the hot wagon before the RS6 Avant came out, which is too new for our broadcast, was the little S4 Avant. And to think that this is on an A4 platform with basically that same V8. I mean, maybe it was
Right.
updated, I don't know, but basically it's a 4.2 V8. And I think the next photo shows it stuffed in that.
Oh my gosh.
And I had one of those that was a 6-speed manual, and it was just the funnest thing to drive. And you talk about surprising somebody when you start one of those up.
That
They're
was your
looking.
Paul Newman car?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
That's
drove
right.
that with you. I went for a ride with that car. I may have driven it, but your Paul Newman car.
Didn't it sound great?
Oh, it did. It was
And it just didn't sound like you would expect that car to sound. Anyway, so those are my
yeah.
three. I just love that little thing, and it actually was fairly useful.
Yeah. Those are great choices. I really love. I drove a few versions of that S4 with the V8. Oh my gosh. And they replaced it and it was improved with a turbo
Right.
V6. It wasn't nearly as good. That V8 was just so delicious.
Yes, it's the right word. Yep.
All right, I picked a few that are. I wanted to do something, a little bit different kind of theme. If you bring them up, Stefan, I had
Good for my
my first one was just the 1995 A4 standard 2.8 liter naturally aspirated V6 with a six-speed, actually a five-speed transmission back then, a manual, and it was so great. It was just ordinary. That's all it was, but it was absolutely competitive with the 3 Series, and the interior was better than the C-Class Mercedes or the 3 Series. The interior was beautiful. It had by the way, this is the first one where they had the classic thing that everyone has now copied: black background, white letters, red needles, and it was
Yeah.
just so perfect. Even BMW, which always had white letters, black background, and then bathed in orange light, even they gave up and they said, okay, red needles and white letters with kind of bright light. And this is the first one where that theme came in. Absolutely wonderful interior. The dials, everything was just so great, and soft touch plastics. It just felt really really nice, and yet it was accessible. I loved it. I just thought it was incredible, and it this one car changed Audi into what they are today more than any other modern Audi. So that's my number one. The number two one is kind of off the beaten track. This was very limited production, but it's the early 2000s RS6 sedan. You had to special order it, and I think they imported probably 1,000 or something. Not a lot, but this was a turbo the same 4.2 liter that you could get in other Audis, including the S6. But the RS6, it was twin turbo, a lot faster, very, very special. And then if you scroll down, my
I
last
love
one
those
was,
flares. Those
yeah,
fender
Yeah.
flares on are absolutely it's kind of like the original the Mercedes E500. You take that design, if you look at, here we go, look at day four again, and just look at the side profile of that car, and just look at the side cookie cutter, exact same profile, but look what the flares do to that car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but if you look at A4, there's cookie cutter medium, but I love the R6. And when I walk by, oh, there's another Audi, but I see the flares on the fenders. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the
Yeah.
RS. So I,
And the lower rocker is
yes,
punched out, kind of bulged out.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
yeah, and they all had, I think they all had silver rear view mirrors, which kind of differentiated them. Yeah, so that's how you could tell if it's coming at you. Just look at the mirrors. And then this is my last one because this is so cool, and this is kind of echoes what Stefan was saying. This was the S6 from around 2010, and this came with what they called the Lamborghini engine. It was a V10. They co-developed the V10 for the R8 and for the S6 and S8, and also of course the RS versions, which were not sold in this country. But you could buy the S6 with the V10 here,
I had no
and
idea.
I just thought it was so cool. It was basically a Lamborghini engine. BMW M5 at the same time had a V10, but I don't know. I just like the Audi one better.
Hmm.
Did they make the this in the RS version with fender flares? Because I mean,
Yeah, they didn't sell it here.
okay, all right.
But they did make an RS with the V10 in Europe.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wow.
And the wagon as well,
and the
correct?
wagon. Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't sell the wagon here, but I just thought it was so cool to have a V10. It was so understated. I just love this car because it was understated. It had a V10. You can still buy them.
That's so cool.
That is so cool. And on your A4, Steve, did you say that it was a press car or you owned one?
No, press car. I never owned one.
Okay. What do we think about the reliability? I'd say that is one sort of lingering ghost in Audi's closet, as far as people who, and I hear it sometimes. I mean, somebody go, "Oh, what do you think about Audi?" And I'll say, "Oh, great car, wonderful design, great engineering, a little more understated." What about the reliability?
Yeah.
Do you
See?
think that not
Yeah.
shedding that has cost them their reputation and possibly sales?
Well, we owned a 2000 S6 Avant wagon. Gorgeous, gorgeous wagon. That thing cost me $500 a minimum every 6 weeks. It didn't matter what broke or what happened in that car. It started at $500 to repair it. And we spent a lot in repairs. And towards the end of its life, we ended up getting it to our daughter. I mean, the one electronic thing went out after another, and it was not. The car was fantastic on the interstate. It was super comfortable. We could haul everything in it, but reliable was not in its vocabulary. And we always had Japanese. We'd always had Hondas. Then Ellen had the Volvo, and then we had the Audi, and the Volvo was not the greatest reliability, but it was way better than the Audi was. And
We
that's
had an
probably our
we had a similar car. It was an '01 A6 Avant, and I remember us talking about it at the time, Stefano. We just didn't have nearly as many problems. I guess you
right.
just got a bad one. And then one of my favorite cars ever was a 2008 A4. It was a 3.2 liter with a six speed, and I taught my kids how to drive manual with that car. I loved that car so much. We never had any problems with it. It was a retired, actually both those Audis were retired press cars that I brought from Audi used. That A4, it just absolutely was bulletproof. We had no problems. We had it for about 5 years. Great car. So I had good luck, especially that A4.
Wow. Well, those are contrasting things. Unless Steph, did you run yours up to a bunch of miles? Did you have?
I think we ended up at about 100,000 miles on it towards the
Yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah. Did your daughter have any better luck?
No, but that was also the same Audi that had the problem with the front clip. So if you park too close
Had it
to a
fallen
curb,
off seriously?
it pulled the whole
Mm.
front end right off the car.
Oh,
It happened 3 times. So in the end, it was just held on with zip ties, you know,
oh.
Yeah,
because
that's a
it was
problem.
the front of the car, the big plastic, bumper listeners that goes across cars. It was basically made for kind of European going down the interstate autobahn, so it was very low, and you could just go to a regular parking lot with the regular little concrete things in the parking lot, and that was high enough that it gently slide over the top. You could barely hear it, but when you backed out, you just watched the thing just blow up. It was awful. It was god awful.
That
Well,
sounds
I'll
like
say
it sounds like a Mars Venus problem.
that I will say that the two Audis that I had before we transitioned out of this were also, I would say, reliable.
Good.
I
Good.
had to spend a little bit of money on preventive maintenance on the S4 wagon, but once it got there, it was a trustable car.
All right, let's talk about trauma surgeon safety. We're the only podcast that has a trauma surgeon. So, Stefan, talk about
All right, so I'm
what
gonna.
you got.
I've talked about this not here, but just kind of briefly. But you sent me an article out of Automotive News. I said this is a great time to talk about this. You know, why are there or what are the differences in automotive safety regulation around the world? To think about, we really have three major global producers of vehicle. And yeah, I know I'm going to say Japan, and now it's Korea, but Japan really represented the East in terms of the automotive industry, Honda, Nissan, all that. And then Europe and the European manufacturers, and then we have America. So three big regulatory bodies that through legislation and laws tell the automotive manufacturers what are the minimums and what new safety features do you have to incorporate and within what time frame. So there's different technical stuff, there's different testing, but I'm just kind of give you an overview of what it is. So in America, we have the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which we just call NHTSA. And the laws that they write are called the FMVSS, the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. And this tells the automotive manufacturers what you have to have in the cars and by when. Now, this is a federal system, so that means the state cannot override the safety requirements, but they can add enforcement rules. So, classic example is that is you have to have seatbelts in your car, but the states legislate ticketing of people not wearing seatbelts. Okay, so that's where the state difference between the federal and the state. What, as you can imagine, America with all our lawyers, the heavy emphasis on American regulation has to do with litigation liability. So in America, if manufacturers face lawsuits if the safety is inadequate, we can go back to the history of that. GM saddlebag gas tanks, Ford Explorer rollovers, Tesla's full self-driving mode. So in America, it's much more regulatory with a lot of liability and a lot of lawyers. And it takes a long time because of lobbyists for us to get new safety standards. And we're behind the Europe and Japan when it comes to a lot of these safety standards. So you've got the EU, which has got the European Commission, and they have what's called the EU vehicle type approval framework. And so the EU gets together, says these are the things that we want to have in vehicles and that we think are safe. And pretty much if you're an EU country and you build a car in these regulations, you can sell your car anywhere in the EU. Versus the US, they are much more precautionary in their principal approach rather than with litigation liability. So they're thinking more forward thinking about it. How can we make things safer? But let's move forward with it. Japan is interesting. That falls under the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism. And their legal basis is they want safety regulations for their road vehicles, but they change the rules based more upon the type vehicles that they have, and they vary their restrictions based more on the vehicles that they see on the roads. Case in point, there are a lot of Kai cars. Those are the very, very tiny Japanese cars. Well, that's a tax basis. There's less tax on those cars. It's cheaper to run. Well, they have higher regulations on what those cars can and cannot have. But overall, Japan is pretty much in line with the rest of us. Now, cars are tested differently in the three between the US, EU, and Japan. And not only tested differently, but there are different criteria from the crashes, which add up to a score. So we do it differently in the three countries. And as you can imagine, I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but the US is all about roof strength, headlights, seat belts, frontal side impacts. It's about the car protecting the passengers. In the EU, the focus has always been on the occupants, but the EU puts very strong focus on pedestrian protection and vulnerable road users, older adults, disabled people with some impact. So an example of this is EU already requires automatic emergency braking. We're not going to see that in this country for at least another 4 years, but the EU's already had that. And to me, we're way behind that. So the EU, you can imagine European countries, a lot more pedestrians, a lot more cyclists. They have placed a great emphasis on making cars safer for pedocyclists. In the US, our pedestrian and pedocyclist death rate goes up. It's continued to go up. It's just awful. We have zero regulation about how, in terms of what is safe for pedestrians in this country. I mean, just take a look at the front of my F-150, the front of a Suburban. But in Europe and Japan, Japan also places a great emphasis on child safety, so backseat passengers, and they also give a much higher score versus advanced driver assistance features. So they are looking for technology as well in their vehicles. But kind of historically, Japan and the EU line up protection for smaller occupants and protection for pedocyclists. So that's really the biggest difference in the way the cars are designed, bumpers, and everything. US zero pedestrian protection requirement. but they've got it over there. Interesting thing about seat belts and airbags. I've spoken on this podcast before. The history of the airbag in America was designed for the unrestrained 90th percentile male. That's why when they first came out, they were all high impact, breaking older ladies and smaller drivers' necks from the force of the deployment of the airbag. And a lot has to do, and to me, I always thought that was ridiculous that we design an airbag for a passenger who refuses to wear their seatbelt. Sorry, dude, that's your fault. Okay. But we're designing that, Europe said, no, we're not doing it that way. The airbags were designed for people that wear their seatbelts. 91% of Americans wear their seatbelts. EU runs about 95 and 98%, and Japan is at 99%. So you think about it, when you now are designing a car to a crash to protect the occupants, if from day one you design that vehicle for occupants that chose to wear their seatbelts, okay?
Mhm.
So it changes in the overall performance of the vehicle. Let's see, what else can we talk about? EU is really leading the world in mandatory advanced driver systems. They already require automatic emergency braking. They require lane keeping assist. They require drowsiness detection, and they require event data recorders. Just a real quick aside on event data recorders. All your cars have a black box that records everything. But in America, we consider our information private and always gets into a huge legal issue when event data recorder. I hit the brakes. Well, EDR says you didn't do it, but try to get that into court through our legal system can be a absolute nightmare. Japan is pushing towards that. They're a little behind the EU, but they're right along. Of course, 2029 for us. Give me a freaking break. Okay, 2029. We've got to wait for it to become required in this country. Lighting a little bit differently. And the lights, you can remember the French had yellow lights until 1993.
And
And
I know you miss them desperately.
I love those yellow lights. But let me tell you something that part of where they came out of, they wanted to be easily identified in the lead up to World War II when we fearing invasion again. You want to know a car coming down the road whether it was good guy or bad guy. And if it was a military vehicle from Germany, it had white lights. If it was French, it had yellow lights. And also, there is improved visibility in rain and fog. That's why you'll still see yellow fog lights on rally cars.
I've got
U.S. is our bumper standards in the U.S. have always been about decreasing the cost, which is of a 5 mile per impact. That's from the insurance lobbyist. Whereas in EU, they're like, no, we don't care about the 5 mile per hour crash because we have automatic emergency braking already in our vehicles. But no, we need to fix our bumpers to kill fewer petacyclists. So, the big philosophy difference here, when kind of put it all together, U.S. wants to protect occupants inside the vehicle, doesn't really care about who the vehicle strikes, doesn't really care that adoption of new automated driving systems are that important. Whereas the EU looks like it that, okay, I'm not worried about just in Japan, I'm not worried about just a driver. I'm worried about pedestrians, cyclists, and I'm worried about aging population. I want more advanced driving features in my vehicles. So very different approach. And we need to come online with Japan and EU, and especially with this as we move till full automation with vehicles driving by themselves. I just still can't believe there isn't NHTSA has done nothing and hasn't presented any legislation mandating what you can and can do behind the wheel. And the case in point, I'm not going to believe it again, but there's a full self-driving mode from Tesla is just ludicrous to me that NHTSA hasn't come in and said you can't do that yet.
So I've been thinking for many years, I'd say decades, that you get into a car in the US or Japan or Europe, it's a safe car. Why do they have different regulations? It would save a lot of money for the manufacturers who sell in all three markets to have
Yes.
just one standard. And now they're having negotiations to do that. Certainly with the EU, they're talking about having one standard, again, to save money for the manufacturers. When you said you wanted to talk about this, I thought, well, I'm going to ask him which standard is the best, but obviously I know. You want so you should, what, right? Why not make everything like the EU? It would be
Yes,
great.
absolutely. Absolutely. The EU and their legislation, what they're requiring on vehicles is just Well, think about it. We're already 10 years behind, not 10, probably 8 years behind I don't know what first year the EU required automatic emergency braking, but it's been there for a while, and the lane keeping, all that is there. And we're a minimum of 8 to 10 years behind there.
And every single manufacturer of vehicles is global, so they
Yes,
already know how to make to meet the rules. So they just do it for everywhere.
right. So what, in the US, a lot of these features are options. You can get the lane keep, all that's option, but you go to Europe, it's there. And the other thing they have, which I didn't mention, was they have adaptive cruise control. It's standard across there. Where you turn on the cruise control, it follows the speed limit signs and it goes at the speed limit. Okay. But
I hate that.
I hate that.
well,
Never mind.
I
yeah,
hate
Never
that.
mind. I wanted uniformity
I
until
All
do
right,
now.
we
hate,
gotta
yeah.
we gotta move on. So,
All right,
Adams, you got
Adams.
some cars spotted, and
Well,
yeah, for
do
the
you have any
record,
comments on
something
that?
that tells me to go the speed limit. I hate.
All right. Do you have any comments on the safety first, Adams?
Yes, I do, but it would take
No,
somewhat
no,
longer.
go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
for it.
Well, the black box thing is the black box in every car, but the U.S. won't allow it in a court of law, or is it not in the U.S. cars?
That is in every car in the US in varying degrees of what it records. It
Okay.
is extremely difficult to crack that black box and get that presented as evidence in a court. Most of the time, you think about it, most all these wrecks are settled out of court.
Okay. Well,
Right.
that's
That's part of it.
yeah, well, yeah, and the legal lobby union we
Right.
can't really talk about. I think that's kind of a crock because they flat do it in aircraft crashes.
Right.
And the second thing is how poorly would a regular old U.S. car, and are we ROW? No, the U.S. car. How poorly would a U.S. car do in the petacyclist, which I can almost not say without smiling, world?
Yeah.
Is it that much different?
I'm sorry, repeat it again.
Are the U.S. bumpers that much injurious to such a huge degree that they're really different
So,
than a
right.
European?
So the number one thing that happens when you strike a petacyclist, what you want is just like when you hit a tree, you want the longest period of time for you to decelerate. Meaning,
Okay,
you want to, if you get hit by a car going 30 miles an hour, you're going to come to a stop. And how long does it take that car that hits you at 30 miles an hour? How long does it take for you to come to a stop? So if you think about it, if you're standing in front of a Suburban or an F-150 and he hits you at 30 miles an hour, you're pretty much going to go from 0 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour across the full front of your body.
okay, yeah,
If you have a car that's got a European design with a lower bumper, and the idea is that now it comes across your lower legs, your hips now strike the hood of the car, your chest rolls across the hood, then your head hits the hood, does not hit the windshield. So you're dissipating the energy across more of your body, and you're allowing the time for you to accelerate to the speed of the vehicle much time. And then they've even spoke of having airbags in hoods where the hood pops up and different things. But
oh, well,
there's a lot of design right now going behind. But what you
yeah,
will not see, and is that's they don't want to see a flat straight front. And I've
gotcha.
not read in detail the legislation in the EU, but there is a lot on how
Well,
it
Steve,
interacts with
I'm with
pedestrians.
you, man. It can't come soon enough that we have one standard.
Yes.
It just makes sense. I mean, the manufacturers would, I hope, welcome it, but some of these might be extreme. Case in point, the cruise control that goes the speed limit, which, as we all know, is only a suggestion.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Next up,
All right. Car spotted, Adams. What do you got?
this car was spotted by my wife, who is not
Let's see.
exactly a.
Do I have a picture of this?
You
Yeah.
do, you
Okay.
do.
It's at the
She's
bottom
a
of the
little
Audi.
bit of
If
a
you look at
car
the Audi
girl.
email, it's at the bottom.
All right.
Only a little bit of a car girl. I mean, she sort of by osmosis, she notices cars, but not like she's a big fan. But this caught her eye, and it just makes me wonder what is this current, and we can't really discuss it. But if you there you go, a 992 in, as we determined, Brewster Green. And isn't it fascinating, this obsession that people have with special colored cars now? And I guess we finally overcome the malaise of the silver, white, black that was 90% of what people bought over the last 10, 15 years. And
I mean,
now,
yeah, listeners, next time you're in a parking lot, look in the parking lot. It is such, and I think you weren't on the podcast when I got back from Europe. I showed all the different colored cars saw in Europe, talked about the color palettes of European manufacturers. US has the most boring color palette in the entire world for vehicles.
yeah, yeah, yep. Well, the dealers, to defend the dealers, but I don't know if it's just a complete lack of imagination. They'd go, "Oh, black, white, silver sells," so they would order black, white, silver. Well, guess what sells? If that's all you have in your showroom, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, now, man, oh man, anybody who watches any of the online auctions or live auctions, the colors bring the bidders, and I
Yes.
love this.
Yes, that Brewster Green I call it as almost like a dark British racing green.
Yep, with no metallic. I think
With
that's the
zero,
cool
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do like those headlights too. Those must be the fancy upgraded headlights.
They are. You'd like them better if they were yellow, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Frenchy.
I think, I of course have a Oslo Blue 911, and I like colors, and I've got a green Lexus SUV, so I do like colors, but that Brewster Green is fantastic. It's kind of understated, but it's cool. I think it's was originally a Ford Model A color. Model T, of course, any color you want as long as it's black, which was very
Yeah.
famous, Henry Ford. But Brewster Green is a very dark green. And I just thought it was great. It's like a forest green, whatever. I just thought that color was fantastic. Just great.
Yep.
It is. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
And not to toot one's own horn, every time I'm in that car, what do 95% of the people say something about?
The color.
The color.
Or the
Everybody's-
5.0. They want to know 5.0. They want to know there's a V8 in that thing?
That's right.
That's what
Yeah,
they want to know.
you got a trim it 5-speed in that thing. You got headers. No, but honestly, everybody's seen a 911 before, but they mentioned that color.
Yeah.
It looks like stone gray. I know it's not. What is the actual name? Because it was just for the 50th anniversary 991 911, and they had two colors. One was like a gray, and then the other one is like yours. What were those two colors, and what's your color?
The other one it may be what is it called? Stone gray, perhaps, but the other one is just sort of excuse me, all the stone gray 911 5.0 owners, but it was just sort of a normal color. This one is called, of all things, geyser gray.
That's it. Yeah, geyser.
Yeah.
That's it.
But my genius niece, who I will give credit to, 11 years old, said, "That's not geyser gray. That's creme brulee." Like, yeah, she's right. That's
right.
exactly what color it is.
She's right.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of gray in there.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, that's funny.
Well, yeah, that's why when I was
Creme
building,
brulee. That's what I tell everybody. It's creme brulee.
working on my Cobra, I spent a lot of time on the color. I mean, because I didn't want a usual Cobra color, but I wanted something. I knew what I wanted, and yeah, the color is key, absolute key. And if I were, a paint to sample is like Steve-O, something off the palette, different color palette, separates you from the rest.
Well, you didn't waste one brain cell on that Cobra color because it's perfect.
So
It is perfect. All right, well, that wraps up this episode, Adams. We're so glad to have you back, and
I had to be
Stephan,
back.
give us a
glad to
closeout.
be here. All right, everybody, thanks for listening and tuning in. Remember to hit that like, subscribe button. That way, when we have a new episode come out, you'll automatically be notified. It'll show up in your to listen to list. All right, guys, take care.